Ever wondered why people throw salt over their shoulders? Or why finding a four-leaf clover is considered lucky? Throughout history, humans have clung to bizarre beliefs to explain the unexplainable, ready to discover the weirdest superstitions that shaped human behavior for centuries. Number 12. Deadly photographs, stealing your soul, one click at a time. Have you ever felt uncomfortable having your picture taken? There might be an ancestral reason for that. When photography first emerged in the 19th century, many indigenous cultures worldwide developed an intense fear of cameras. They believed these strange devices could capture and steal their souls. This wasn't just a passing concern, it was genuine terror. In parts of Native America, Africa, and Asia, people would actively flee from photographers. The Amish community still limits photographs today, partly due to this historical concern. The idea stemmed from the belief that a person's soul could be transported through their image or reflection. The logic wasn't entirely unreasonable for people encountering this technology for the first time. If a machine could somehow capture your exact likeness, something previously impossible, what else might it be taking from you? Some believed that each photograph removed a piece of the soul, gradually weakening the person until death. Others thought the entire soul could be trapped in the photograph, leaving the body an empty shell. Shamans and spiritual leaders in various cultures warned their people about the dangers of these soul-stealing boxes. In some communities, if someone fell ill after being photographed, it was immediately blamed on their captured soul trying to escape. Elaborate rituals were sometimes performed to reunite the person with their stolen essence. Even in the Western world, where photography was invented, early photographers reported resistance and fear from potential subjects. Victorian-era photographers sometimes had to spend considerable time explaining their technology and reassuring nervous clients. This superstition has largely faded with the ubiquity of photography in modern times, but remnants remain. Next time someone says, "You took my bad side" about a photo, remember it comes from a time when the real concern was losing something much more precious than just appearing photogenic. Number 11. Beginner's luck. The universe welcome gift or cosmic joke. Ever won big the first time you played a game? There's a widespread belief that novices possess an uncanny ability to succeed where experienced practitioners fail. This phenomenon, beginner's luck, appears in cultures worldwide. The origins of this superstition are murky, but fascinating. Some trace it back to gambling cultures in ancient Rome, where first-time players were sometimes viewed as having the temporary blessing of Fortuna, the goddess of luck. The concept appears in Chinese folklore too, where newcomers are thought to attract good fortune spirits curious about the new activity. What makes this superstition particularly interesting is how it creates its own psychological reality. When beginners believe they're lucky, they often play more freely, unburdened by knowledge of what should work, sometimes leading to creative approaches that actually do succeed. Conversely, experienced players might overthink, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that reinforces the superstition. Casino owners love and loathe of this belief. On one hand, it encourages new gamblers to try their luck. On the other, occasional beginner victories can cost them significantly. Historical accounts from Las Vegas casinos include stories of first-time visitors winning jackpots that statistical probability said were nearly impossible. The belief runs so deep that some regular gamblers develop elaborate rituals to reset their luck. These might include changing casinos, switching games, or even temporarily giving money to a friend so they can play as a beginner by proxy. Scientific explanations exist, of course. Selective memory plays a role. We remember the beginner who won spectacularly, but forget the hundreds who lost. Statistical regression to the mean also contributes. If a game involves luck, even experts will have widely varying results. Yet, the superstition persists. Professional poker players admit to feeling uneasy when a novice joins their table. Video game enthusiasts joke about beginner's luck when a friend performs unexpectedly well on their first try. And almost everyone has a story about that one time they excelled at something on their first attempt, never to replicate the success again. Number 10, breaking mirrors. 7 years of cosmic payback. Dropped a mirror lately? Did your heart skip a beat? The belief that breaking a mirror brings 7 years of bad luck is one of the most enduring superstitions in Western culture. But where did this oddly specific penalty come from? The fear dates back to ancient Rome, where mirrors were precious items believed to reflect more than just physical appearance. Romans thought mirrors captured pieces of the viewer's soul. When broken, the soul was believed to be fractured as well. The 7-year timeline wasn't random. Romans believed the body renewed itself completely every 7 years, so that's how long it would take to repair the damage. Before Rome, ancient Greeks practiced chiromancy, divination using mirrors. Breaking a mirror during these rituals wasn't just inconvenient, it was considered a direct rejection of the god's attempt to communicate, warranting divine punishment. The superstition spread throughout Europe during the Middle Ages, gaining additional power when mirrors became more common, but remained expensive. Breaking a nobleman's mirror could mean financial ruin for a servant, giving practical reinforcement to the superstitious fear. Throughout history, people developed countermeasures to avoid the 7-year sentence. Some buried the broken pieces under moonlight. Others ground the shards to dust so they could no longer reflect anything. The most common remedy involved immersing the broken pieces in running water for 7 hours, symbolically washing away the bad luck. Victorian England saw the height of mirror superstition, with elaborate rituals developing around mirror placement in homes. Mirrors were covered during thunderstorms to avoid trapping lightning, and when someone died in the house, to prevent the deceased soul from becoming trapped. Breaking a mirror during these sensitive times was considered doubly unfortunate. The superstition remains surprisingly strong today. A 2019 survey found that 14% of Americans admit to feeling genuinely concerned after breaking a mirror. Interior designers report clients insisting on specific mirror placements to maximize good fortune. And countless people still instinctively perform some ritual, touching wood, crossing fingers, or saying a quick prayer after hearing that distinctive shattering sound. Number 9. Walking under ladders, a triangle of trouble. Ever detoured around a ladder propped against a wall? This seemingly innocent act of caution stems from one of history's most persistent superstitions. The fear of walking under ladders transcends cultures and centuries, but its origins might surprise you. The superstition began with ancient Egyptian beliefs about the sacred nature of triangles. When a ladder leans against a wall, it forms a triangle, a shape Egyptians considered divine and representative of their gods. Walking through this triangle was considered profoundly disrespectful to the deities, an act that would surely invite punishment. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, the superstition evolved, but didn't disappear. The ladder took on new symbolic meaning connected to Christ's crucifixion. A ladder leaning against the cross created that same triangular shape, and walking through it was seen as mocking Christ's death. Some medieval paintings of the crucifixion scene include a ladder, cementing this association. By the 1600s, the superstition took another dark turn. As public hangings became common punishment in Europe, ladders were essential tools for executioners. Walking under a ladder could mark one as following in the footsteps of the condemned. Prison guards reported that some superstitious criminals would refuse to walk under the ladder to the gallows, as if that particular bit of bad luck was worth avoiding even in their final moments. The fear persisted into the industrial age for more practical reasons. Workers on ladders occasionally dropped tools or paint, making walking underneath legitimately risky. This real-world reinforcement helped keep the superstition alive, even as religious interpretations faded from common knowledge. For those who accidentally walked under ladders, various countermeasures developed. Some believed crossing fingers until seeing the dog would reverse the bad luck. Others insisted on spitting 3 times through the rungs of the ladder. The most common remedy involved walking back through the ladder in the opposite direction, essentially unwinding the bad luck. Today, construction safety regulations prohibit walking under ladders for entirely practical reasons, giving this ancient superstition a modern rational justification. Yet surveys show many people still avoid walking under ladders even in completely safe contexts, a testament to how deeply ingrained these beliefs become in cultural consciousness. Number 8. Black cats crossing your path. Feline harbingers of doom, or divine messengers. Seen a black cat recently? Did you feel a momentary chill? For centuries, people have regarded these midnight-colored felines as portents of fortune, both good and bad, depending on where and when you lived. The vilification of black cats in Western culture began during the Middle Ages with Pope Gregory IX's declaration in the early 13th century. His papal bull, Vox in Rama, explicitly connected black cats to Satan worship and witchcraft. This official church position transformed cats from ordinary animals into suspected demonic familiars. The specific fear of a black cat crossing one's path emerged from the belief that witches could transform into cats, crossing someone's journey to cast spells upon them. This fear reached horrifying extremes during the Black Death, 1347 to 1351. As plague ravaged Europe, cats were massacred due to their supposed connection to witchcraft. Ironically, this likely worsened the epidemic by reducing the population of natural predators of rats, which carried plague-infected fleas. The superstition wasn't universal, however. In ancient Egypt, cats of all colors were revered, with the goddess Bastet often depicted as a black cat. In Japanese culture, black cats are considered lucky, especially for single women seeking suitors. British sailors took a nuanced view. Having a black cat on board was considered extremely lucky, but encountering one walking away from them before boarding was a terrible omen. Regional variations within Europe created confusing contradictions. In British folklore, a black cat walking toward you bringing good fortune, while one walking away took good luck with it. In Germany, the direction mattered too, but with different interpretations. A black cat crossing from right to left was auspicious, while left to right predicted misfortune. During World War II, the British actually experienced a shortage of black cats as their popularity soared. Families sought them as pets, believing they provided protection during air raids. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Nazi Germany perpetuated medieval fears, associating black cats with conspiracies and hidden enemies. The persecution had measurable consequences. According to animal shelter statistics, black cats still take longer to adopt than cats of other colors. Some shelters even suspend black cat adoptions around Halloween, fearing ritualistic harm to the animals. Modern Halloween decorations continue to pair black cats with witches and supernatural themes, keeping the association alive in popular culture. Yet simultaneously, social media campaigns like Black Cat Appreciation Day attempt to reverse centuries of superstitious prejudice against these animals. Number 7. Friday the 13th. When calendar coincidence creates collective fear. Feel uneasy when the 13th falls on a Friday. You're not alone. This particular date triggers paraskephidekatriophobia, fear of Friday the 13th, in millions worldwide. But how did an ordinary calendar alignment become so dreaded? The superstition blends two separate ancient fears. 13 has been considered unlucky since at least the Viking era, where Norse mythology tells of a dinner party for 12 gods ruined, when Loki, the 13th guest, arrived uninvited and orchestrated the death of Balder, god of light and joy. This tale established the unlucky 13th guest concept that persists in dinner party seating arrangements even today. Christianity amplified this unease with 13. The Last Supper hosted 13 people, with the 13th Judas Iscariot betraying Christ. This cemented 13's sinister reputation in Western culture. Friday carried its own baggage. In Christian tradition, Friday was when Eve tempted Adam with the forbidden fruit and when Christ was crucified. Medieval Christians considered it inappropriate for important undertakings, including travel, marriages, or beginning new ventures. When these two unlucky elements converged, Friday and the number 13, superstitious fear intensified dramatically. By the 19th century, Friday the 13th had become specifically identified as an inauspicious date. The superstition received an enormous boost in 1907 when Thomas W. Lawson published a novel titled Friday the 13th. The bestseller featured a villain who deliberately crashed the stock market on this feared date. Within 2 decades, the date had become so notorious that the 1933 National Recovery Administration was nearly derailed when business leaders objected to its scheduled launch on Friday, August 13th. The fear gained further momentum with the Friday the 13th horror film franchise beginning in 1980. The slasher series, now spanning 12 films, permanently associated the date with Jason Voorhees and his hockey mask, turning a superstition into a pop culture phenomenon. The economic impact is surprisingly significant. Some estimates suggest businesses collectively lose between $800 million and $900 million in revenue on these dates as people avoid travel, reschedule surgeries, postpone major purchases, and skip work. Airlines report reduced bookings. Hospitals note increased cancellations of elective procedures. Some buildings still skip the 13th floor, jumping from 12 to 14 in their number. Marriage license applications drop significantly on these dates in many counties, and despite living in a technological age, major product launches and business deals are still sometimes rescheduled to avoid the date. Curiously, the superstition creates measurable safety benefits. Studies show fewer accidents and emergency room visits occur on Friday the 13th compared to other Fridays, likely because superstitious individuals behave more cautiously or stay home altogether. Number 6. Stepping on cracks breaking more than sidewalks. Remember skipping over sidewalk cracks as a child. The playground rhyme, "Step on a crack, break your mother's back," seems like innocent fun, but this superstition has surprisingly dark historical roots and psychological impact. The fear of stepping on cracks dates back to ancient beliefs about boundaries and thresholds. Cracks represented gaps between the physical world and the spiritual realm, places where malevolent forces might emerge. By avoiding these openings, people believed they were protecting themselves from evil spirits that could rise through the earth. In medieval Europe, this general wariness evolved into more specific concerns. Cracks in the ground were associated with unmarked graves. Stepping on them was considered disrespectful to the dead, who might seek revenge for the disturbance. Church floors were often deliberately constructed with intricate patterns to make people mindful of their steps, a practice subtly reinforcing this superstitious behavior. The specific connection to maternal misfortune, break your mother's back, emerged during the late 1800s, coinciding with significant social changes in family dynamics. Victorian-era children were experiencing new pressures regarding behavior and respect toward parents. The superstition functioned as a psychological mechanism reinforcing filial obedience, suggesting a child's actions could have direct, magical consequences for their mother. During this period, the rhyme took on racial dimensions in America. Some versions explicitly mentioned bears as punishments for stepping on cracks, which was code for black people in the racist parlance of the time. This connected the innocent-seeming game to deeply problematic social attitudes being instilled in children. The superstition's persistence into modern times partly stems from its incorporation into childhood development. Learning to avoid cracks requires spatial awareness and motor control, skills children are naturally developing around the age. They typically learn the superstition. The activity becomes a game-testing developing abilities, embedding the superstitious behavior through physical practice. Psychologists note this particular superstition can sometimes evolve into symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder in vulnerable individuals. What begins as childhood play occasionally transforms into rigid compulsions, involving walking patterns and step counting. Some OCD treatment protocols specifically address these sidewalk-related compulsions. Today, variations of the superstition exist worldwide. In Russia, stepping on a crack is said to bring financial hardship. Korean traditions warn that stepping on cracks between floor tiles means you'll end up marrying someone with a scarred face. British folklore suggests that counting cracks while walking will reveal how many days until receiving good news. Despite our rational modern understanding, sidewalk cracks continue triggering that momentary hesitation in many adults who logically know better, a testament to how deeply childhood superstitions embed themselves in our behavioral patterns. Number 5. Knocking on wood, tapping into ancient tree spirits. Just mentioned something fortunate in your life. Better knock on wood. This nearly universal gesture persists across cultures and centuries. But why do we rap our knuckles against wood after mentioning good fortune? The origins trace back to pre-Christian European folklore, particularly Celtic and Germanic traditions, where trees were believed to house powerful spirits. Oak trees, specifically, were sacred to Thor in Norse mythology and to Tyrannis in Celtic belief systems. When seeking favors or protection, people would touch these trees, often with a respectful knock, to alert the spirit to their presence and request. As Christianity spread through Europe, the practice evolved rather than disappeared. The wooden cross of Christ's crucifixion became associated with divine protection, shifting the meaning of wood touching from communicating with tree spirits to connecting with Christian salvation. Medieval churches often claimed to possess fragments of the true cross, which pilgrims would touch for blessing and protection. The specific knocking gesture, rather than just touching, may have developed from an ancient belief that knocking sounds drove away evil entities. The noise was thought to prevent malevolent spirits from hearing about good fortune and becoming jealous. Some folklorists suggest the knocking mimicked the sound of invisible protective spirits answering the door to one's request for continued good luck. By the 1800s, the practice had become widespread enough that it appeared in literature without explanation, suggesting readers would understand the reference. Charles Dickens mentioned characters touching wood in multiple works. The American variation, knock on wood, became standardized in the early 20th century. The superstition shows remarkable adaptability across cultures. In Brazil, people say, "Bate na madeira," while knocking 3 times. Russians knock 3 times as well, but add the phrase tufu tefl, a spitting sound meant to ward off the evil eye. In Turkey, people knock twice on wood, then once more while pulling their earlobe, combining 2 protective gestures. During World War I, soldiers carried touch pieces, small wooden tokens, since trenches rarely contained wooden surfaces. These pieces were often carved from trees growing near their hometowns, adding emotional significance to the superstitious practice. The gesture became so ingrained that by the mid-20th century, people knocked on wood even when no wood was available, knocking on their own heads with the joke that their heads were wooden, or making the knocking gesture in the air while saying, "knock on wood." Interestingly, scientific research suggests there might be psychological benefits to this ritual. Studies show that performing superstitious behaviors can increase confidence and reduce anxiety, potentially improving performance in subsequent tasks. The act of knocking creates a sense of having taken protective action, relieving the unconscious worry about tempting fate. Today, even skeptics often find themselves instinctively reaching for wooden surfaces after mentioning good news or future plans. The behavior has outlasted the belief system that created it, a cultural echo of ancient tree worship surviving in our modern technological world. Number 4. Rabbit's foot. Luck borrowed from the swift. Ever carried a rabbit's foot keychain? This particular lucky charm has hopped through centuries of superstitious practice, but its origins are far darker than its fluffy appearance suggests. The rabbit's foot tradition emerged from the complex intersection of European folk magic and African spiritual practices in the American South during the pre-Civil War era. While Europeans had long associated rabbits with fertility and rebirth, the specific practice of carrying a severed rabbit's foot as a talisman appears to have developed among enslaved populations, combining various spiritual traditions. The earliest documented references to rabbit's feet as lucky charms appear in American hoodoo traditions, a spiritual practice blending African, Native American, and European folk beliefs. What made the charm particularly powerful wasn't just any rabbit's foot, but specifically the left hind foot of a rabbit, caught in a cemetery during a full moon, by a person with questionable moral character. These highly specific requirements point to the ritual's origins in serious magical practice, rather than casual superstition. The belief stemmed partly from the rabbit's perceived nature. Rabbits were admired for their swiftness and reproductive abilities. Carrying part of this quick, prolific creature transferred its advantageous traits to the bearer. The left side was considered significant in many magical traditions as connecting to the heart side of the body and to lunar influences. Symbolic collection requirements linked the charm to liminal spaces between life and death, while the full moon timing connected it to maximum magical potency in numerous traditions. The morally questionable collector requirement suggested the charm worked through sacrificial transfer. Someone worthy of punishment sacrificed the rabbit instead of facing consequences themselves. By the late 1800s, commercialization transformed this complex magical practice into mass-produced tourist souvenirs and novelty items. Metal caps were added to preserve the foot and to make it more appealing. By the 1930s, dyed rabbit's feet in various colors became popular, further disconnecting the charm from its ritual origins. During both World Wars, rabbit's feet experienced resurgences as soldiers carried them for protection. Military supply records show rabbit's feet were among the most common personal items found among American soldiers' possessions. Some units even adopted them as unofficial mascots. The demand for rabbit's feet as charms created ethical concerns by the mid-20th century. Most commercially sold rabbit's feet today are actually synthetic or come from rabbits already processed for meat, avoiding wasteful slaughter specifically for charms. The transition to fake rabbit's feet raises interesting questions about whether believers think synthetic versions work equally well. suggesting the power lies more in the symbolic representation than the action. The power lies more in the symbolic. Modern studies in behavioral psychology suggest carrying such talismans can improve performance through increased confidence. People believing in their lucky charm often perform tasks more successfully due to reduced anxiety. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle, as successes are attributed to the charm, strengthening belief in its power. Despite growing awareness of its problematic origins, the rabbit's foot remains embedded in popular culture as the quintessential lucky charm, appearing in everything from country music, lyrics to film plots, a physical manifestation of humanity's enduring hope to influence unpredictable fortune. Number 3. Spilled salt. Tears of bad luck. Ever knocked over the salt shaker at dinner? The instinct to toss a pinch over your left shoulder isn't random. This widespread superstition connects to millennia of human history, economics, and spiritual beliefs. Salt wasn't always the common kitchen staple we know today. Throughout most of human history, salt was precious, sometimes valued higher than gold. Roman soldiers received salarium, the root of our word salary, specifically for purchasing salt. This economic reality formed the foundation for the spilled salt superstition. Wasting something so valuable was genuinely unfortunate. The spiritual dimension emerged from salt's preservative properties. Before refrigeration, salt was humanity's primary defense against food spoilage. This practical use led to salt, symbolizing purity, preservation, and protection from corruption across multiple cultures. In religious contexts from ancient Egypt to medieval Europe, salt represented permanence and covenant, making its spillage symbolically disastrous. Leonardo da Vinci embedded this superstition in Western cultural consciousness with his masterpiece, The Last Supper, 1495 to 1498. The painting deliberately shows Judas Iscariot knocking over a salt cellar, connecting salt spillage to betrayal and evil. After this artistic representation, the superstition intensified throughout Europe. The remedy? Throwing salt over your left shoulder has specific spiritual significance. According to medieval belief, the devil lurked behind the left shoulder, the sinister side, waiting for opportunities to cause trouble. Throwing salt in the devil's face temporarily blinded him, preventing him from pushing the salt spiller toward further misfortune or sin. This counteraction transformed a simple accident into an elaborate spiritual battle. The superstition shows remarkable consistency across cultures. In Japanese tradition, spilled salt requires throwing a pinch over the shoulder while saying, "Oni wa soto," demons out. Persian custom calls for placing a finger in the spilled salt and touching it to the forehead. Leonardo's painting influenced Western practice, but similar remedies evolved independently worldwide. Throughout history, salt played roles in significant religious rituals. Jewish tradition includes salting ceremonial bread. Catholic baptismal rites historically placed salt on infants' tongues. Hindu purification ceremonies use salt. These spiritual associations amplified the perceived consequences of casual spillage. Modern restaurants still observe the tradition in subtle ways. Many fine dining establishments remove spilled salt from the table with the over-the-shoulder toss, performed discreetly by servers. Some hospitality training manuals explicitly mention this practice as both tradition and practical showmanship. Psychologically, the ritual serves an important function. The act of correcting the mistake through the shoulder toss provides closure and relief, transforming an anxiety-producing moment into a completed ritual with defined beginning and end. This psychological comfort explains why even skeptical people sometimes find themselves reflexively reaching for spilled salt. Salt's connection to tears, salt water, added another dimension to the superstition. Medieval Europeans believed spilling salt predicted tears in proportion to the amount spilled. This association persists in expressions like, "not worth the salt in my tears," connecting emotional distress to this mineral so essential to human physiology. Number 2. Opening umbrellas indoors. Unfurling disaster under your roof. Have you ever felt that twinge of discomfort watching someone open an umbrella inside? This seemingly irrational fear connects to practical origins that evolved into something much more significant over centuries. The modern umbrella's design dates back to ancient China around 1100 BC, but the superstition against opening them indoors emerged much later in 18th century London, coinciding with the development of spring-loaded mechanisms. Early European umbrellas featured metal spokes and stiff springs that could snap open forcefully, potentially injuring bystanders in confined spaces or damaging delicate decorations in Victorian-era homes. What began as practical caution transformed into superstitious dread? The transformation from practical advice to supernatural belief was accelerated by umbrella symbolism across cultures. In ancient Egypt, umbrellas and parasols were sacred items used exclusively by nobility and religious figures. The shadow cast by these devices was considered divine protection. Opening such an object indoors symbolically challenged the protection of household gods who already shielded the home's inhabitants, a spiritual offense that invited divine correction. Japanese culture developed its own version of this superstition. There, opening an umbrella indoors was said to invite a serpent to fall from the ceiling. This belief connected to the visual similarity between an open umbrella's ribs and a snake's skeleton. The superstition was serious enough that some traditional Japanese homes featured umbrella stands outside the front door, preventing the items from ever entering the house fully closed. Victorian England, where the modern superstition solidified, added another layer of meaning. During this period of elaborate mourning rituals, black umbrellas became strongly associated with funerals. Opening one inside the home symbolically invited death to enter the household. Some versions specifically warned that opening an umbrella inside meant someone in the house would die before the year ended. The belief spread throughout Europe, with regional variations. In Spain, opening an umbrella indoors presaged financial ruin. Polish traditions warned it would cause unmarried women in the household to remain spinsters. French superstition claimed it specifically affected marriage prospects for young daughters. When English and European immigrants brought these beliefs to America, they merged with existing weather folklore. In rural American communities, umbrella-related superstitions expanded. Opening one indoors during fair weather would cause rain on an important upcoming event, while opening one indoors during storms would prevent the weather from clearing. Theater communities developed particularly strong prohibitions against open umbrellas backstaged or during rehearsals. This theatrical superstition traced back to the days when stagehands might accidentally knock over props or scenery while manipulating an open umbrella in cramped, backstage areas. The practical concern evolved into a significant taboo, with some professional companies still banning umbrellas from their buildings entirely. Today, umbrella designs have improved dramatically with safety features, preventing sudden openings, yet the superstition persists. Luxury hotels train staff to never open umbrellas indoors when returning them to guests. Wedding planners accommodate couples who insist that ceremonial parasols remain closed until everyone is outdoors. Even television production studios sometimes require closed umbrellas until actors step onto outdoor sets. Consumer psychology research suggests the superstition may actually influence purchasing decisions, with some umbrella manufacturers developing models that open more gradually, specifically to reduce the anxiety associated. Number 1. Counting magpies. Saluting avian prophets. Ever noticed a magpie and felt compelled to greet it? Across the British Isles and parts of Europe, encountering these distinctive black and white birds triggers an almost reflexive counting response, often accompanied by ritualistic greetings, salutes, or rhymes. But why have these particular birds inspired such elaborate superstitious practices? The magpie's cultural significance stems partly from its unusual intelligence. As members of the corvid family, along with ravens and crows, magpies demonstrate problem-solving abilities, use tools, and even recognize themselves in mirrors, a rare capability in the animal kingdom. This observable intelligence made them seem uncanny to ancient observers, suggesting these creatures might possess special knowledge or supernatural connection. Their distinctive black and white coloration furthered their mystical association. The contrasting plumage symbolized duality, night and day, good and evil, life and death, making magpies natural omens at the boundary between ordinary life and supernatural influence. In many European traditions, magpies were thought to have refused to enter Noah's Ark, or to have been the only birds not to mourn at Christ's crucifixion, giving them associations with defiance against divine authority. The specific practice of counting magpies and interpreting their number as prophetic emerged in British folklore by the 1700s, with the most common version of the rhyme appearing in written records around 17. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. Regional variations evolved across England, Scotland, and Ireland, with some versions extending to 10 or more birds, each number carrying different prophetic meanings. The consistency across regions in associating a single magpie with misfortune suggests deep cultural roots for this particular aspect. The elaborate rituals developed to counter the bad luck of a lone magpie reveal how seriously people took this superstition. In parts of Yorkshire, seeing one magpie required immediately touching iron, spitting 3 times, or making the sign of the cross. Some traditions insisted on verbal greetings. "Good morning, Mr. Magpie. How is your lady wife today?" Acknowledging the bird while inquiring about its mate to symbolically transform the lone bird, sorrow, into a pair, joy. In Ireland, encountering a solitary magpie near a roadway required removing one's hat and bowing as a sign of respect to avoid the bird's curse. Scottish Highlands traditions suggested turning in a complete circle to confuse any evil the bird might be directing toward you. These physical rituals, performed in public without embarrassment, demonstrate how deeply ingrained the superstition was in daily life. The associations with prophecy intensified when Napoleon Bonaparte's fate became connected to magpie sightings in European folklore. Historical accounts claim Napoleon encountered a number of magpies before several major battles, with the outcomes following the pattern predicted by the rhyme. Before Waterloo, allegedly, he spotted a single magpie, one for sorrow indeed. Modern research offers fascinating insights into why this particular superstition might have emerged. Magpies typically mate for life and travel in pairs. A lone magpie often indicates its mate has died or been killed, potentially serving as a genuine ecological warning sign of environmental disturbance or predator presence. The instinctive unease people felt upon seeing a solo magpie might have had practical survival value, later codified into supernatural belief. Today, the superstition remains surprisingly vigorous in Britain. A 2015 survey found 30% of respondents admitted to actively saluting or otherwise acknowledging magpies when spotted, and 75% were familiar with the counting rhyme. Contemporary British television shows, books, and music reference the tradition, keeping it alive in popular culture. Even in our technological age, people report feeling momentary anxiety upon seeing a single magpie cross their path before an important meeting or event. Some British sporting teams have magpie-related rituals before matches, and wedding planners occasionally field requests to ensure magpie-free ceremony sites. This enduring superstition demonstrates how deeply our ancient need to read meaning into natural phenomena persists alongside our scientific understanding. Are you superstitious? Which of these ancient beliefs still influences your behavior today, perhaps without you even realizing it? The next time you find yourself instinctively avoiding a ladder, greeting a magpie, or knocking on wood, remember, you're participating in traditions that connect you to countless generations who sought to make sense of an unpredictable world through these small rituals of magical thinking.